Hello, hello, hello. So we need like a fan to cool it down after that session. And next time, note to the organizers, we should put Matthew in the middle between the two opposite views. Victoria and I have the pleasure to close out the show today. We stand between you and cocktails on the roof, so that's a tall order, not only following that panel, but also that. But I'm really looking forward to the next 25 minutes. Victoria is the CTO of the Wikimedia Foundation, and before that, she spent her whole career building and doing research in amazing both enterprise and consumer companies, and has just a ton of perspective. But currently, as CTO of Wikimedia, why don't you start? I mean, I'm sure the vast majority of us in this room have gone to Wikipedia in the last month. So we know Wikipedia really well, but you're the CTO of the Wikimedia Foundation. So why don't you start by just giving the audience a little bit of an overview of what is the Wikimedia Foundation?
Thank you for that. So first of all, let me tell you a little bit about our mission. So we pride ourselves in aiming to make available the sum of all knowledge to every human being on the planet. That's our mission, that's our goal. We're a non-for-profit. We are actually headquartered just up the street here on New Montgomery Street. There are about 260 of us in the foundation. There are many, many thousands of us outside the foundation that are all working together to create some of the sites that you all know and love. I'm not surprised that many of you actually would have been on our sites. Our Wikipedia is the #5 most visited site on the planet. So, we're right behind Google, Baidu, YouTube, and Facebook. Thank you. Keep coming. We enjoy having you. We are the guardians of the projects. There are 12 projects that currently in the movement that we support. Wikipedia is the most prominent one of those, but there are many others. Some of them are in the next 3 to 5 years going to be just as influential as Wikipedia has been during our first 15 years. Wikidata, it's one of these projects that we're very proud of. It's a collection of structured data that really pulls together concepts in the web in a way that is completely reusable and allows us, for example, to be much more productive as we spread our content in all manner of languages. We're present in 299 languages as of last count for Wikipedia.
299 languages?
Out of 6,000 plus, so we have ways to go yet.
Wow.
So these are the things that we do. Perhaps it might be interesting also to talk about the things that we don't do.
Perfect, please do.
Oftentimes people assume that we do editing. So, I've been in the foundation just a little under a year, and I can tell you the first thing that happened to me, I would get masses of emails from people who were notable enough to have a biography asking me how they should go about changing things and asking me to edit. So I would show them how to edit themselves. And then I would tell them also that we don't actually edit as Wikimedians. We edit as community members, but we don't edit as members of the foundation. The other thing that we don't do is we don't monetize our users, our content, our presence. We don't monetize our content, we don't monetize our traffic. We are completely funded by donations. And this is, perhaps, a bit proverbial, but it is true. Our average donation is $15. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an understanding of the breadth of what we do.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It definitely does. So, if your mission is to help bring free education to everyone, to all, getting to everyone can be hard. Right? Let's start by the second part. So how do you get access to people in hard-to-reach areas, whether it's developing countries? Like, what makes that hard or easy from your perspective?
Well, I think it's definitely a challenge for us, and it's kind of interesting. We, of course, we build this movement primarily in North America and Europe. That's the places where it's most prominent. Our ambition, of course, goes much beyond that. And we started actually doing some pretty well-defined and focused research. So we had researchers just this past year in Brazil, in Mexico, in India, in Nigeria, trying to understand what the local communities need in order to be able to leverage the knowledge that others create in other parts of the world, and also to create their own knowledge, because all knowledge really is contextual. You know, what you need to know in San Francisco is different than what you need to know in Athens, Greece. I mean, locality is really important for us. And you know, one of the things that we found is people really don't know who we are. So in this so-called Global South research that we've been doing, people often think that we're the same as Google.
Really?
So one of the things that we are working really hard around is putting some emphasis on the brand and the mission and communicating with people what it means so that they can in turn, you know, hopefully come to us and become part of the community and the movement to service those in those regions.
That's great. That's important. You know, we just heard from Darren and Larry on the last panel, and this notion of fake news came up. And you know, as I was hearing that, of course, I thought, well, what is the Foundation's point of view around fake news, and what can you do to either give us hope for the future?
So first of all, the Foundation and the Wikipedia in particular does not deal in news. One of our core principles in the Foundation, in Wikipedia, I should be more precise, is what we call NOR, so no original content. An encyclopedia should be something that reflects on existing knowledge. It's not a place where you go to publish knowledge. So we really don't support news as such in Wikipedia, but what we do, of course, is we believe very strongly in verifiability. So the content that we put out there, we're going to make sure that is as reliable as we can make it. And of course, it's really almost a conundrum for those on the outside to comprehend how this happens. We have an active community of 200,000 editors that, you know, go in, day out, and make changes to our content. How do they do that? How is it that our content, for the most part, is pretty accurate? I mean, nobody would argue it's 100% right, but it always gets better, and it keeps growing. Well, you know, in our community, in our movement, there are these three principles that we live by, and that's one of them, as I mentioned, is no original content. The other one is verifiability. So anything that appears in Wikipedia has to be backed up by a source. So I don't know if sometimes, you know, I wish I had the T-shirt. So we often say citation needed. So if you go to an article and you see citation needed and you have time, please look, and maybe there's a source that you can refer to help make the article better. The other thing that we do is we maintain and ask our community to hold itself accountable to a neutral point of view. So, you know, these are the three core principles around which our content is built. And the way that really these principles are implemented and embedded in our community is because people truly internalize and believe them. So there are 200,000 people out there that are each watching, you know, part of the artifact, and they make sure that these principles are upheld. And I can tell you they're very vocal, and they hold each other truly accountable. So, you know, in our world, it works because we're open. And I have to tell you this. I don't know how many of you read the Post. I'm not a regular reader, but I've started reading it recently. They have a new tagline: "Democracy dies in darkness." And you know, when I read that, it's a very powerful thing for me personally. And I reflect on the work that we do in the Foundation. And for us, really, it's exactly the opposite. It's like truth thrives in openness. So openness for us is really, I think, how we manage to create content that is high quality and does not contain fake material to the extent we can help it.
That's amazing. When there's something controversial posted on something like Wikipedia, how fast does it get reverted?
Oh goodness, I mean.
Like, are we talking about hours, days, months, minutes?
It very much depends on how top of mind the topic is, but sometimes it's seconds. Content that is verifiably incorrect very rarely persists, I would say, past a week or a month. We have a very, very active, editor community that are passionate. And maybe I can say a little bit about that. When I first joined the Foundation, I met James Heilman. He's now on our board. He's an ER doctor. And I was told that he's one of the most prolific contributors. You know, if you look at Wikipedia, there are two places where most content exists. And one is medicine, and the other one is, any guesses?
Politics?
Actually, it's military history.
Ah.
It turns out that military historians are really enamored of our platform and they do a great deal of work. So back to James, I said to him, listen, you have a very demanding job. I mean, I don't know how you do your job. How do you find time to edit? And he said, look, I went to school because I want to help people. I can see maybe 20 people in my office every day. If I write an article in Wikipedia, I know that 45 billion people a month come to look at it. I mean, it's an amazing platform for people that have skill sets to really help the world, right? So that's what really brings those people to us.
That's amazing. One of the reasons why I got into technology instead of the medical field is I also wanted to go to the medical field to help people. And one of the reasons why I found myself into technology is because it's another way to be able to help people at scale.
That's right.
And so that definitely resonates. One of the things we were talking about as we prepared for today is that everything on Wikipedia has to have a source, a citation.
That's right.
But that must be hard to have to go back, especially since some of that, as we go towards more walled content and gardens online, what are the implications for, again, truth lying in the open from your perspective?
So we take that very seriously. And, one of the initiatives that maybe I can say a little bit about is our initiative for open citations. So this past June, through a heroic effort of Dario Taraporelli, one of the researchers in my team, we were able to liberate 45% of all citations on the planet. So, think about that for a moment. All of a sudden, millions, like 16 millions of citations became available for everybody to use. And, this is material. It's not only material for the verifiability of the articles, which is very important, but it also is very important for researchers. For example, if you remember, like about a year ago, we had the Zika virus outbreak. Mm-hmm. It was very new, nobody knew much about it, but people began to build knowledge very rapidly. By being able to share the citation graph around the Zika virus, I am absolutely convinced this community was able to accelerate finding solutions by months, years.
Wow.
So, again, openness has all these unintended, unexpected consequences. So we advocate vociferously for openness, for content that's not behind a wall. We go beg and plead with publishers to make articles available to us. And sometimes our communities also take controversial steps. Again, I don't know how many of you remember, but a little while ago, the English Wikipedia community decided not to allow citations or references to the Daily Mail, a newspaper in the United Kingdom, in the encyclopedia. And they did that because they felt that as a source of news, that newspaper at that particular point in time was not reliable.
Wow.
So they took that decision unilaterally. And again, back to what the foundation doesn't do, that's not something that we decided to do at the foundation. That's what the community decided to do in order to make sure that they were true to the three principles that I spoke about earlier.
Oh, wow. And has that since been reversed?
I don't believe so.
Oh, wow. That's a powerful community.
Very opinionated.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned at the beginning that, the foundation builds a lot of tools, open source tools. Like, it's not just Wikipedia. So what are one or two, and you quickly touched on the tools, but what are some of the other open source tools that you're building that others in this audience on the live stream might find useful?
Thank you. I think that's a great question. Again, openness is at the center of everything that we do. The fact that we develop tools that help us also give us the opportunity to help others help themselves. So, you talked about the Global South, we talked about 6,000 languages. The foundation, you'd be surprised perhaps to hear, we're 260 people. We're not going to be present in 6,000 geos to do these things. If we support and build open source tools and make them available, we give people the tools that they need to help themselves. To give you an example, the core stack that we run at the foundation is something called MediaWiki. Some of you may be familiar with it. MediaWiki has been around quite a long time. Today, we put 99% of our traffic through it, and it's a lot of traffic. But the most surprising thing perhaps about it is that there are literally hundreds of thousands of installations of MediaWiki outside the foundation. And in surprising places, Department of State, Department of Energy, actually the intelligence community. The intelligence community has a product called Intellipedia, and I believe like on average they get 350,000 hits per day. Wow. That is all built on MediaWiki. So again, sometimes unintended consequences. A marquee user of MediaWiki that I'm really excited about is actually the San Francisco MoMA, just down the street here.
The MoMA.
So they use MediaWiki. So, you know, another way of giving people tools to create and share knowledge. Another example is our Wikimedia Cloud Services team. So we run something called ToolForge. So what we're doing is we're taking both compute and storage, but most importantly data sets from what we see in our sites and make them available to volunteers who then write tools. And you'll be amazed at the productivity and the ingenuity of the tools that these folks produce. So, Tool Labs, I think when I last looked, 1/4 of the edits that happen go through Tool Labs. They support, I don't know, like, again, last I heard was like, 4 billion calls to the API. They support 1,400 tools. Wow. So, you come to us, we will give you what you need, which includes a lot more than just, compute and storage. We'll give you data sets to work with. And people make magic happen.
It is amazing. I feel like the foundation is a study in people coming together around the world.
Yes.
It is pretty incredible. Yes. I mean, there's been some pessimism today, but this is an example of some of the optimism of the power of people working together. I have one more question, and then we'll go to questions. And I can see Kalia really wanting to ask you a question, so we'll make sure we get to you, Kalia. But Victoria, so Wikipedia is one of the top 5 sites on the internet. So of course you want to keep that position and expand to more languages, although you've covered, I'm sure, you have great surface area of the most popular ones. What's next for the foundation? When you guys think about 10 years from now, your future, like what do you and your team want to accomplish?
I think we want to continue to scale. How we get there and what this means for us actually was a matter of a lot of introspection. And again, this will tell you a lot about how we work. We're just coming to the tail end of an 8-month consultation process with our community about what our strategy ought to be for the next 5 to 15 years. We accomplished a lot in the first 15. Really? What do we want to do in the next 15 years? And as you said, I came from a corporate background, and you know how strategy is made in corporate. You go to the boardroom and you figure it out, and then you announce how it's going to be. Well, I can tell you this is not how it works in our movement. We're at the tail end of a process that literally engaged thousands of people, thousands of volunteers all over the world to come together and tell us how they want to develop their movement. Because, it's not our movement, it's their movement. And at the end of that, we did a great deal of work in synthesizing what we heard. And what we heard was that we're going to continue focusing on what we call knowledge equity, making knowledge available to everybody. Like the community told us that they want us to be bolder, they want us to have more influence in the world, more positive influence in the world. And they also told us that they want us to look far beyond the confines of North America and Europe. They want us to be present in all the places where people can use free knowledge. So that was really interesting. The plurality, the kind of diversity of opinion, the openness of that conversation was just breathtaking to me. I'm really glad with it coming at the end. Now, though, the hard part comes for us at the foundation, because now we'll actually have to figure out how we get there. Yeah. So maybe next time you have one of these conversations, I'll be able to tell you what our plan is. But my job between now and Christmas is to figure out what it means for us, what it is we should be doing, at least from a technology perspective, to get us there.
Yeah, so and then execute on it.
Exactly.
Great. Let's move to questions. If you have a question for Victoria, please. So Kalia, go ahead, Kalia.
Hi. So I don't know if you've read in the news lately, but Silicon Valley has a gender issue. It has some other issues too, but I actually went and looked up the research on the gender makeup of the Wikipedia community, and it's 90% men. Right, so you're saying we're talking to our community. I'm like, yeah, but who's your community? And I know for myself, like when they were going to erase Dana Boyd's article because she wasn't prominent enough, I was like, I'm done. I don't even want to try, right? And then even in my own area of professional expertise, digital identity, I dabbled in editing, but it was like, oh no, those are just kind of the culture of who's invited to participate, whose articles, like what articles are challenged or not. I don't know if it's still true, but there was like more articles about women porn stars than women scientists. Right, so I don't want to end on a negative note, but I actually think
you
maybe
raise a very good point.
How is both the leadership and your leadership of a community that has these gender issues that are also in Silicon Valley meaningfully addressing them going forward?
That's a great question. So the first thing I wanted to say, and this is a little unusual, at sea level, the L2s at the foundation, there are 9 of us. 7 of us are women. I have never worked at a place where this is the case. Broadly within the foundation itself, we are fairly balanced. Not so much in technology. I would like it to be better. But I sympathize and I agree with your comments. One of our I don't want to say challenges, but we don't know who people are. So people that edit can use whatever identity they want. In fact, they can have multiple identities and so on. So we don't actually know what percentage of our editors are female, other groups and so on. We have a guesstimate from research that various universities have done that is somewhere between 10 and 25%. It's still
Are women.
Yeah. Still vastly underrepresented. And that manifests itself, of course, in bias in articles. So about 3 weeks ago, I was at a hackathon that we organized up in Montreal. One of our engineers actually did an amazing piece of work going through articles, biographical articles about men and women and noting the differences. So it was mind-blowing to see that in a woman's biography, the chances are that the first paragraph of the biography would talk about what their spouse, what their husband was doing. I can tell you this was not the case in male biographies. So, it's a problem that we are very well aware of. How do we surface it? From a technology perspective, I will give you a technology solution. We're building tools that our community can use to help them reduce bias when possible. But the real solution is not to have bias in the first place. So a lot of the work that our community engagement department is doing is to precisely try to break down those barriers that make the experience of becoming an editor not welcoming. And I know exactly what you mean. A community that's been around for 15 years that has found a way of working and has matured is not necessarily like the easiest place to get into. It's a little bit like refugees moving in from Syria. It's like, no, look, this is a neighborhood. We know how this works. Go away, you're different. And we really want to break that down. I think the first step is recognizing it.
Definitely.
I also want to say that I resonate with your point about being difficult. It's difficult to write articles. When the project started, the idea was that you'd write 3 bullets, you throw them in there, and then others will come and make it better. Now they're so good that it's really hard to write one that is the best one. Our community engagement department is working with people to give them tools to get there. In technology, for example, we'll do recommendations. We'll, to the extent that we can have a profile of who you are, we'll say, there's an article over here that we think we can help with. Go in there first and make your first edit and build credibility and capability. Become a respected member of the community, and then we'll get better. So hopefully this answers some of your question. It was really good. I'm glad that
yes.
that you asked that. It's a work in progress for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, so one of the things you talked about is the idea that things are in Wikipedia are footnoted. And often those footnotes refer to links on the web, and those links are brittle because they're talked about retrieved on such and such a day. And then that particular website isn't there, goes away, changes. So I'm wondering if there can be a partnership between Wikimedia and Internet Archive, so that the page can be archived, that you can look at the page as it was retrieved and verify that it actually said that. And one of the additional reasons that that's useful is the Federal Circuit has ruled that Wikipedia is not admissible in court as prior art evidence, but the links are. And so those links could actually be evidence introduced in court.
So I'm really excited that you asked this question. You know, we should make this session like 5 hours long.
There we go.
It would be great. So next time we'll do that. But you know, we know that we're not going to succeed in our mission without partnerships. So we look to build partnerships with everybody, including the Internet Archive. So one of my to-dos actually from Wikimedia, our recent conference in Montreal, is to come down and meet with the Internet Archive and see how we should be able to work together to do exactly what you proposed.
Amazing. Well, we have literally business development happening in real time on stage. And so please give me a round of applause. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you for all the work. Yeah.
Thank you.